The stars were quiet that night. Captain Do-yun Park stood on the bridge of the Starfall and looked out at the endless darkness. His ship was small compared to the warships of other species. It was a human exploration vessel, built for discovery, not for war. The crew of 47 souls had been traveling for 3 months, mapping new regions of space that no human had ever seen before. Do-yun was a man of 42 years. His hair was starting to turn gray at the sides, and his eyes carried the weight of many difficult decisions. He had served in the human fleet for 20 years, but he preferred exploration to combat. He believed that the universe held wonders worth finding, and he had dedicated his life to finding them. Lieutenant Yuna Kang sat at the tactical station. She was younger than the captain, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers moved across the console as she monitored the space around them. She had served with Do-yun for 5 years, and she trusted him completely. He had never led them wrong. The ship hummed softly as it moved through the void. Engineer Tiho Lim was somewhere in the lower decks, checking the engines as he always did. Dr. Hana Choi was in the medical bay, reviewing the health reports of the crew. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then the alarm started. Yuna's eyes went wide as her screens filled with red warnings. "Captain," she said, her voice steady but urgent, "we have contacts, multiple contacts." Do-yun walked to her station and looked at the display. His heart sank. Ships were appearing from hyperspace all around them, not one or two but dozens. The signatures were familiar. They belonged to the Vorn Dominion. The Vorn were one of the oldest species in this part of the galaxy. They had built an empire across 100 star systems, and they did not like strangers in their territory. Their ships were massive, built for destruction. Each one carried enough weapons to reduce a planet to ashes. "How many?" Do-yun asked. Yuna counted quickly. 47 warships, Captain. They are forming a sphere around us." Do-yun felt cold. A sphere formation meant one thing. The Vorn did not want them to run. They wanted them trapped. The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was not human. The Vorn had gray skin and large black eyes. Their mouths were thin lines and their heads were crowned with small ridges. This one wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer. Gold symbols decorated his chest. "Human vessel," the Vorn said. His voice was deep and filled with contempt. "I am Admiral Kale of the Vorn Dominion. You have violated our space. This is a crime punishable by death." Do-yun stepped forward. He kept his expression calm, even though fear was crawling through his stomach. "Admiral Kale, I am Captain Do-yun Park of the human exploration vessel Starfall. We did not know we had entered Vorn territory. Our charts showed this region as unclaimed. We meant no offense." Kale laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Your charts are wrong, human. This space has belonged to the Dominion for 10,000 years. Your ignorance does not excuse your crime." "We are explorers," Do-yun said. "We carry no weapons. We are not a threat to you." "All species are a threat," Kale replied. "We have heard of humans. You are new to the stars. You are weak. You are primitive. Your kind spreads like a disease, claiming worlds that do not belong to you." He leaned closer to the screen. "Today, that disease will be cured." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Yuna looked at Do-yun. "Captain, what do we do?" Do-yun did not answer immediately. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also waiting for him to lead them. That was his duty. That was his burden. "Open a channel to the whole ship," he said. Yuna pressed a button. "Channel open, Captain." Do-yun spoke and his voice reached every corner of the Starfall. "This is the captain. As you have probably noticed, we have company. 47 Vorn warships have surrounded us. Their admiral has demanded our surrender. He has told us that we will die." He paused. "I want you all to know something. I am not going to let that happen. We are humans. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We find a way." He ended the broadcast and turned to Yuna. "Begin passive scans of every Vorn ship. I want to know everything about them. Their weapons, their shields, their weak points. Yuna nodded and began working. Doyun activated his communicator. Tiho, I need you on the bridge. A few minutes later, Engineer Tiho Lim arrived. He was a large man with rough hands and a quick mind. He could fix anything, build anything, and solve problems that would make other engineers cry. He looked at the tactical display and whistled softly. That is a lot of ships, he said. Yes, Doyun agreed, and we need to get past them. Tiho scratched his chin. The Starfall is not a warship, Captain. We have mining lasers for asteroids and cargo haulers for supplies. We were not built for battle. I know, Doyun said, but we were built by humans, and humans always build things that can do more than one job. Tiho's eyes lit up with understanding. You want me to get creative? I want you to get very creative, Doyun confirmed. Dr. Hana Choi entered the bridge. She was a small woman with gentle hands and a brilliant mind. She specialized in alien biology, and she had studied dozens of species during her career. Captain, I heard the announcement. How can I help? Tell me about the Vorn, Doyun said. Tell me their weaknesses. Hana thought for a moment. The Vorn have sensitive ears. They can hear sounds that humans cannot. It is how they communicate in their natural environment. Loud noises or high-frequency sounds cause them great pain. That is useful, Doyun said. What else? They are arrogant, Hana added. They have ruled this region for thousands of years. They believe they are superior to all other species. They will underestimate us. Doyun smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. That is very useful. The main screen activated again. Admiral Kale's face appeared. Human Captain, you have 1 hour to surrender your vessel and your crew. If you do not, we will destroy you. There will be no mercy. There will be no escape. The transmission ended. Yuna looked at the clock. 60 minutes. It was not much time. Doyun looked at his crew. Yuna at tactical, Tiho with his engineer's mind, Hana with her knowledge of their enemy. They were not soldiers, they were explorers, scientists, and dreamers, but they were also human, and humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. They did not know how to quit. 1 hour, Doyun said quietly. 1 hour is more than enough. He turned to his crew and began to plan. The Vorn thought they had trapped prey. They were wrong. They had trapped something far more dangerous. They had trapped humans who had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Outside, the Vorn fleet waited, 47 ships, thousands of soldiers, weapons that could crack planets. They were confident. They were certain of victory. They had no idea what was coming. The clock was counting down. 53 minutes remained before the Vorn fleet would attack. Captain Doyun Park gathered his senior officers in the small meeting room next to the bridge. The room was meant for planning exploration routes and studying star charts. Today, it would be used for something very different. Yuna Kang brought the tactical data she had collected. Tiho Lim carried a tablet full of engineering notes. Dr. Hana Choi sat quietly, thinking about everything she knew about the Vorn. 2 more officers joined them. Navigator Minyu Seo was young, only 25 years old, but he was the best pilot Doyun had ever seen. Communications officer Bora Shin was an expert at signals and frequencies. Close the door, Doyun said. What we discuss here stays here until we are ready. The door slid shut. The room became silent. Let me tell you something that most of the galaxy does not know, Doyun began. Human ships are not unarmed. They are unweaponized. There is a difference. Minyu frowned. I do not understand, Captain. Doyun looked at Tiho. Explain it to them. Tiho stood up and activated the wall screen. A diagram of the starfall appeared. When humans build ships, we build them for many purposes. Our mining lasers can cut through asteroids, but asteroids are made of rock and metal, just like ship armor. If I change some settings and increase the power, those lasers become weapons. He pointed to another part of the diagram. Our cargo haulers carry heavy containers. Those containers can be launched at high speed. They do not have explosives, but when something heavy hits you very fast, it does not need explosives. It is simple physics. What about our engines? Yuna asked. Our engines produce radiation, Tiho said. Normally, we keep it contained, but if I release it in a controlled burst, it can damage sensors and electronics. The Starfall was built to survive in dangerous space. Every system has a second purpose. We just need to find those purposes. Doyun nodded. The humans who built our ships knew that space is dangerous. They knew that we might face situations like this. They gave us tools. Now we need to use them. Yuna pulled up her tactical data on the screen. I have been studying the Vorn fleet. Their ships are powerful, but they have a weakness. All 47 ships receive commands from Admiral Kale's flagship. It is a central command system. If we can disrupt the signal from the flagship, the other ships will lose coordination. They will become confused, Hana added. The Vorn are not good at independent thinking. Their military trains them to follow orders. Without orders, they will not know what to do. How do we disrupt the signal? Doyun asked. Bora Shin spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but confident. I can create a feedback loop in their communication frequency. When the flagship sends a signal, my loop will catch it and send it back multiplied. Every ship will receive the same message 1,000 times at once. Their systems will overload. And their ears, Hana said. The Vorn use audio signals for communication. A feedback loop will be extremely painful for them. They may be unable to function for several minutes. Doyun felt hope building in his chest. What else do we need? Yuna zoomed in on the Vorn formation. Even with the confusion, we cannot fight 47 ships. We need to escape. The formation is tight, but there are small gaps where ships are slightly farther apart. If we can blind their sensors for a few seconds, we can slip through. Tiho, Doyun said, can you blind them? Tiho grinned. The mining lasers can do more than cut. If I set them to scatter mode, they will produce a bright flash, very bright. Their optical sensors will be useless, and the radiation from our engines can disrupt their electronic sensors. For how long? Maybe 8 seconds, maybe 10 if we are lucky. Doyun turned to Minyu. 8 seconds. Can you get us through a gap in 8 seconds? Minyu was already running calculations on his tablet. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. Numbers and trajectories filled the display. He looked up after a moment. There is a gap forming at coordinates 227 alpha. It is small, but the starfall can fit. I will need exactly 7.3 seconds to reach it from our current position. We will need to do a micro-jump. A micro-jump is dangerous, Yuna warned. If the calculations are wrong, we could end up inside a Vorn ship. I will not be wrong, Minyu said simply. There was no arrogance in his voice. It was just a fact. Doyun looked around the table. So this is our plan. Bora will overload their communications and cause them pain. Tiho will blind their sensors. Minyu will fly us through the gap. And then we run. What about the assault shuttles? Yuna asked. Admiral Kale will probably send boarding parties before the hour is up. He will want to capture us, not just destroy us. Doyun considered this. When do you think he will launch them? Near the end of the hour. He will wait for us to surrender first. When we do not, he will send soldiers. Then we use it against him, Doyun decided. When the shuttles launch, there will be gaps in the formation. That is when we strike. Hana raised a concern. Captain, there is risk. The feedback loop will hurt the Vorn, but it will not kill them. They will recover. If our plan fails, they will be very angry. If our plan fails, we will be dead anyway, Doyun replied. I would rather die trying than surrender and be executed. The room was quiet. Everyone understood. This was not a guarantee of survival. It was a chance, a small chance. but humans had built civilizations on small chances. "How much time do we need to prepare?" Do-yun asked. Tiho checked his notes. 30 minutes for the lasers and engines. 20 minutes for the feedback loop, Bora said. "The micro-jump calculations are already done," Minyu added. Do-yun nodded. "Then we have time. Get to work. Tell no one else until we are ready. I do not want the Vorn to detect any change in our behavior." The officers stood up and left the room. Each one had a task, each one knew what failure meant, but none of them showed fear. They showed determination. Do-yun remained in the room alone for a moment. He thought about his crew, 47 people who trusted him, scientists, engineers, doctors, pilots. They were not warriors. They had families back on Earth. They had dreams and hopes and plans for the future. He would not let them die here. He left the room and returned to the bridge. The main screen showed the Vorn fleet, 47 ships. They looked like predators circling wounded prey. Admiral Kale was probably sitting in his command chair, feeling confident. He had done this before. He had crushed other species. He expected humans to beg for mercy. He was going to be very surprised. The clock showed 41 minutes remaining. Do-yun sat in his command chair and watched the enemy. He thought about what Hana had said. The Vorn were arrogant. They believed they were superior. That was their weakness. They could not imagine that a small human ship could threaten them. Down in engineering, Tiho was already working. His hands moved quickly as he adjusted the mining lasers. He hummed an old Earth song while he worked. It was a song about not giving up. It seemed appropriate. In the communications center, Bora was writing the code for the feedback loop. Lines of programming filled her screen. She had designed communication systems for 10 years. She had never designed one to be a weapon before. But she was human, and humans adapted. On the bridge, Minyu sat at the navigation console. His eyes were closed and he was visualizing the escape route. He could see it in his mind. The gap at 227 Alpha. The micro-jump, the exact angle and speed they would need. He had never failed a calculation. He would not fail now. Yuna checked the tactical sensors again and again. She was looking for any weakness she might have missed, any advantage they could use. The Vorn ships were powerful, but they were also old designs. They had not changed in centuries. The Vorn saw no reason to change. They were winning, so why improve? Humans, on the other hand, changed constantly. They improved, they adapted, they evolved. It was in their nature. It was what made them dangerous. The clock continued to count down. 35 minutes, 30 minutes, 25. In his command chair, Do-yun allowed himself a small moment of doubt. What if this did not work? What if the Vorn were too fast? What if Minyu's calculations were wrong? What if they all died in the cold darkness of space? Then he pushed the doubt away. Doubt was a luxury he could not afford. He had a plan. He had a crew. He had the stubborn refusal to die that every human carried in their heart. "They think we are prey," he said quietly to himself. "Let us remind them what humans do when they are cornered." The clock showed 20 minutes. The trap was about to spring. But the Vorn did not know that they were the ones who were trapped. The hour ended. The clock on the bridge showed 0 and every member of the crew held their breath. Captain Do-yun Park sat in his command chair, his face calm, his hands steady. Inside, his heart was beating fast, but he would not show fear. Not now. Not when his crew needed him to be strong. The main screen flickered. Admiral Kale's gray face appeared. His black eyes were cold and filled with contempt. "Your time is up, human. I gave you 1 hour to surrender. You did not. Now you will face the consequences." Do-yun said nothing. He just stared at the screen. Kale's thin lips twisted into something like a smile. "You are brave to stay silent, or perhaps you are just stupid. It does not matter. My soldiers will board your ship and take you alive. You will be brought before the Dominion Council. They will decide your punishment. I expect it will be unpleasant." The screen showed movement in the Vorn fleet. Hatches were opening on the nearest ships. Small assault shuttles were launching, filled with Vorn soldiers. They moved toward the starfall like hungry insects. Yuna Kang looked at her tactical display. "Captain, I count 12 assault shuttles. They will reach us in 4 minutes. "Good," Doyun said. "Let them come closer." On the main screen, Kale looked pleased. "You accept your fate, that is wise. Resistance would only." Bora, Doyun interrupted. "Now." Bora Shin pressed a button on her console. Nothing seemed to happen for a moment. Then the universe went mad. The feedback loop activated. Every Vorn communication signal was caught, multiplied, and sent back 1,000 times stronger. The carefully organized fleet suddenly received 1,000,000 messages at once. Every channel, every frequency, every speaker exploded with noise. On the Vorn ships, chaos erupted. The Vorn had sensitive ears. They communicated through sounds that humans could not hear. Now those sounds were amplified to levels that caused pure pain. Vorn officers grabbed their heads and screamed. Crew members fell to the floor, unable to think, unable to function. Admiral Kale's face on the screen twisted in agony. His mouth opened in a silent shriek, and then the transmission cut off. "Phase 1 complete," Bora reported. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of satisfaction in it. "Tiho," Doyun commanded, "blind them." In engineering, Tiho Lim activated the modified mining lasers. Instead of focused beams, they released a massive flash of light. The flash spread outward in all directions, hitting every Vorn ship at once. Optical sensors overloaded. Cameras burned out. For a few precious seconds, the Vorn fleet was completely blind. At the same time, Tiho vented radiation from the engines. The controlled burst spread like an invisible wave, scrambling electronic sensors and disrupting scanning systems. The Vorn ships could not see. They could not hear. They could not detect anything. "Phase 2 complete," Tiho announced. "We have maybe 8 seconds, make them count." "Minyu," Doyun said, "get us out of here." Navigator Minyu Seo had been waiting for this moment. His hands were already on the controls. The micro-jump calculations were perfect. He knew the exact coordinates. He knew the exact speed. He knew exactly where the gap was. The Starfall's engines roared to life. The ship leaped forward with a sudden burst of acceleration that pushed everyone into their seats. On the tactical display, Yuna watched their ship race toward the gap at coordinates 227 Alpha. 3 seconds, Minyu counted. 2 seconds, 1 jumping now. Space folded around the Starfall. For a brief moment, the ship existed in 2 places at once. Then it snapped back into reality on the other side of the Vorn formation. They were out. They were free. Behind them, the Vorn fleet was in complete disorder. Ships were drifting without control. The assault shuttles, caught in the chaos, were spinning aimlessly. Admiral Kale's flagship was dark, its systems overloaded. Yuna stared at her display in disbelief. "We made it. Captain, we actually made it." Doyun allowed himself a small smile. "Do not celebrate yet. They will recover. Minyu, full speed away from here. Take us toward the asteroid field in Sector 9. "Yes, Captain." Minyu's fingers danced across the controls. The Starfall accelerated, putting distance between itself and the crippled fleet. Doyun activated the ship-wide communication. "This is the captain. We have escaped the Vorn encirclement. I want to thank every member of this crew. You all did your jobs perfectly, but we are not safe yet. The Vorn will follow us. Stay at your stations and stay alert." He closed the channel and turned to Bora. "Open a channel to the Vorn flagship. I want to send them a message." Bora looked surprised but did as she was told. "Channel open, Captain." Doyun stood up and faced the screen. He knew that Kale would hear this even if he could not respond. "Admiral Kale, this is Captain Doyun Park of the Starfall. You told us that humans are weak. You told us that we are primitive. You told us that we would die today." He paused. "You were wrong. You surrounded the wrong species." He gestured to Bora to close the channel. She did, and a small smile appeared on her face. Behind them, the Vorn fleet was slowly recovering. Systems were rebooting. Officers were struggling to their feet. Admiral Kale sat in his command chair, his head pounding with pain, his ears ringing. He had never experienced anything like that. No enemy had ever caused such chaos so quickly. "Find them," he growled to his crew. "Find them and destroy them. No prisoners, no mercy." His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. "Admiral, the human ship escaped through the gap at 227 Alpha. They are heading toward the asteroid field in Sector 9. "Follow them," Kale commanded. "All ships pursuit formation." But all ships could not follow. The feedback loop and the radiation burst had caused serious damage to many vessels. Sensors were burned out. Communication systems were destroyed. More than half the fleet could not move. "Admiral," the tactical officer said nervously, "only 15 ships are capable of pursuit." Kale's eyes burned with rage. A single human exploration ship had crippled his fleet. His perfect trap had failed. He would be disgraced if word of this reached the Dominion Council. "15 ships are enough," he snarled. "Those humans have no weapons, they cannot fight, they can only run, and eventually they will run out of places to hide." He was right about one thing. The Starfall could not fight a straight battle against 15 Vorn warships, but he was wrong about everything else. On the bridge of the Starfall, Do-Yun watched the tactical display. 15 red dots were breaking away from the main fleet and following them. "They are coming," he said. 15 ships, Yuna confirmed. "They will catch us before we reach the asteroid field." "Then we need to slow them down." Do-Yun turned to Tiho. "How much of that cargo do we still have?" Tiho understood immediately. "We have 28 cargo containers. Some are full of supplies. Some are full of metallic ore we collected for study. Can we launch them behind us, use them as obstacles?" Tiho nodded. "Better than obstacles, Captain. I can rig them to explode. Small explosions, but enough to damage shields and engines." "Do it." Tiho left the bridge at a run. He had work to do. Yuna looked at Do-Yun. "Captain, even if we slow them down, we cannot escape forever. Eventually, they will catch us." "I know," Do-Yun said, "but every minute we survive is a minute to think. Every minute is a chance to find another solution." Dr. Hana Choi spoke up. "The asteroid field might help us. The Vorn ships are large. They will have trouble navigating between the asteroids. We are smaller. We can go where they cannot." "Good thinking," Do-Yun agreed. "Minyu, when we reach the asteroid field, take us into the densest part. Make them work to follow us." "Yes, Captain." The Starfall raced through space with 15 hunters behind it. The humans had won the first battle, but the war was not over. The Vorn were angry and determined. They would not stop until the Starfall was destroyed. But the humans were not planning to make it easy. They had already done the impossible once. They could do it again, because that was what humans did. They faced impossible situations and they found ways to survive. Do-Yun sat in his command chair and watched the stars streak past. Somewhere ahead was the asteroid field. Somewhere ahead was their next chance. He did not know exactly what they would do, but he knew they would think of something. Humans always did. The asteroid field appeared on the screens like a wall of floating mountains. Millions of rocks drifted through space, spinning slowly, crashing into each other, creating a maze that no sane pilot would enter. Captain Do-Yun Park looked at it and saw hope. "Take us in, Minyu," he ordered. Navigator Minyu Seo did not hesitate. The Starfall dove into the asteroid field at full speed. Rocks the size of houses flew past the windows. Minyu's hands moved across the controls with perfect precision. He dodged left, then right, then up, then down. The ship twisted and turned like a fish swimming through dangerous waters. Behind them, the 15 Vorn warships followed. Admiral Kale's flagship led the pursuit, its massive form pushing through the smaller asteroids like a beast crashing through a forest. But the Vorn ships were not built for this kind of flying. They were too big, too heavy, too slow to turn. "They are falling behind," Yuna reported. "The asteroids are slowing them down." "Good," Doyun said, "but they will adapt. We need to give them more problems." Engineer Tiho Lim's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, the cargo containers are ready. I have rigged 12 of them with explosives. They will not destroy a Vorn ship, but they will damage shields and engines." "Launch them," Doyun commanded. "Spread them along our path." The Starfall's cargo bay opened, and metal containers tumbled out into space. They floated among the asteroids, almost invisible against the gray rocks. Tiho had painted them to blend in. The Vorn would not see them until it was too late. The first Vorn ship hit a container. The explosion was small but focused. It punched through the ship's shields and cracked its engine housing. The ship slowed, smoke pouring from its wound. It could not continue the chase. Two more ships hit containers. One lost its main sensors. The other suffered damage to its weapon systems. They fell back, unable to keep up with the pursuit. "3 ships disabled," Yuna announced. 12 still chasing us." On the Vorn flagship, Admiral Kale watched his ships fall one by one. His rage grew hotter with each explosion. "Slow down," he ordered. "Scan for more traps." But slowing down meant losing the humans, and Kale could not accept that. His pride would not allow it. A new voice spoke on the Vorn command channel. It was Commodore Thex, Kale's second-in-command. Thex was different from Kale. He was careful, patient, and smart. He had survived many battles by thinking before acting. "Admiral," Thex said, "the humans are leading us into a trap. We should stop and wait for reinforcements from the main fleet." "No," Kale snarled. "I will not let them escape. I will not be humiliated by these primitives." "Admiral, we have already lost 3 ships. We will lose more if we continue this reckless pursuit." Kale turned to face Thex on the screen. His eyes were filled with dangerous anger. "You question my orders, Commodore." Thex knew the danger. Kale was not a forgiving commander, but Thex also knew his duty. "I question the wisdom of chasing prey that has already drawn blood. These humans are not what we expected. They are clever. They are dangerous." Kale was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice cold as ice. "You will take command of the pursuit, Commodore. Capture or destroy the human ship. Do not fail me." The communication ended. Thex was now in charge. He immediately ordered the remaining ships to slow down and form a new formation. "Spread out," he commanded. "Box them in. Do not chase them in a line. Force them to choose a direction, then close the trap." On the Starfall, Yuna noticed the change. "Captain, the Vorn are changing their tactics. They are spreading out, trying to surround us again." Doyun frowned. "Someone smarter is now in charge. This will be harder." The Starfall continued deeper into the asteroid field. Minyu flew brilliantly, finding paths that seemed impossible. But the Vorn were learning. They were patient now, moving slowly, closing the net around the human ship. An explosion rocked the Starfall. Sparks flew from a console and the lights flickered. "Report," Doyun demanded. "They hit us," Yuna said, her voice tense. "A lucky shot through the asteroids. Shields are down to 40%. Another hit, the ship shuddered. Alarms started screaming. "Hull breach on Deck 4, Tiho reported from engineering. "Emergency doors have sealed. We lost 2 storage rooms." "Casualties?" Doyun asked. Dr. Hana Choi checked her medical console. 3 injuries, minor. I am treating them now." The Starfall was taking damage. The Vorn were closing in. The asteroid field that had protected them was becoming a prison. Yuna looked at Doyun. "Captain, at this rate, we will not last another 20 minutes." Doyun stood up and walked to the main display. He studied the tactical map. The Vorn ships were forming a half-circle behind them, slowly pushing them toward the edge of the asteroid field. Once they left the field, they would be easy targets. "We need something dramatic," he said, "something they will not expect." Minyu spoke without looking away from his controls. "Captain, there is a pulsar 3 light minutes from here. It is about to emit a burst." Do-Yun looked at the navigation data. The pulsar was a dead star that sent out powerful waves of electromagnetic radiation. When it burst, it would disable all electronics in range. Ships would go dark, sensors would fail, engines would stop. "How long until the burst?" Do-Yun asked. 12 minutes, Minyu replied. "Can we survive it?" Dr. Hanachoy answered. "The burst will cause intense pain and temporary blindness. It may damage some of our systems, but humans are resistant to electromagnetic radiation. We evolved on Earth, which has a strong magnetic field and high radiation from the sun. The Vorn evolved on a dark world with low radiation. Their nervous systems are much more sensitive." "They will be knocked unconscious," Yuna realized, "but we will stay awake." "It will hurt," Hana warned. "A lot, but yes, we will survive. They probably will not." Do-Yun made his decision. "Minyu, change course. Take us toward the pulsar." Minyu hesitated for just a moment. Flying toward a pulsar was insane. Every pilot was trained to avoid them, but he trusted his captain. He changed course. The starfall turned and accelerated toward the deadly star. Behind them, the Vorn ships followed. Commodore Thex watched the human ship on his display and frowned. "Where are they going?" he muttered. His tactical officer checked the navigation charts. "Sir, there is a pulsar in that direction. It is dangerous. They would not go there." "And yet they are," Thex said. He studied the humans' course. He was a cautious commander, but he was also curious. What were the humans planning? Then he understood. "All ships stop pursuit," he ordered suddenly. "Do not follow them toward the pulsar." But not all of his captains obeyed. 3 ships continued forward, their commanders too eager for glory to listen to warnings. They wanted to be the ones who captured the human vessel. They wanted the honor. They would get something very different. The starfall flew toward the pulsar. The dead star grew larger on the screens. It was a sphere of white fire, spinning rapidly, building energy for its burst. Do-Yun watched it with a mixture of fear and hope. 2 minutes to burst, Minyu announced. "All crew," Do-Yun broadcast, "brace for electromagnetic pulse. This will be painful, but it will not kill us. Stay at your stations. Trust each other." The 3 Vorn ships were close behind them now. They were firing their weapons, trying to disable the starfall before it reached the pulsar. Shots hit the ship's shields. More alarms screamed. A fire broke out on Deck 7. 30 seconds, Minyu said. "Hold course," Do-Yun ordered. The pulsar flashed. A wave of pure energy exploded outward, faster than light, brighter than 1,000 suns. It hit the 3 Vorn ships first. Their lights went out. Their engines died. Their weapons fell silent. Inside, Vorn crew members collapsed as the radiation overwhelmed their sensitive nervous systems. Then the wave hit the starfall. Do-Yun felt it like fire in his brain. His vision went white. His ears rang with a sound that was not really sound. Every nerve in his body screamed. He heard his crew crying out in pain. He wanted to scream too, but he could not find his voice. The wave passed. The pain remained, throbbing like a terrible headache. Do-Yun blinked, trying to see. His vision was blurry. His hands were shaking, but he was alive. He was conscious. "Report," he managed to say. Yuna's voice was weak. "I am here, Captain. Systems are damaged, but we are alive." "Minyu." "Still flying, Captain." Minyu's voice was strained but steady. "Engines are offline. I am rerouting power." "Tiho." "Working on it," Tiho replied from engineering. "Give me 5 minutes. I will get us moving." Behind them, the 3 Vorn ships drifted silently. They were dark and dead, their crews unconscious or worse. Commodore Thex watched from a safe distance, his face pale with shock. The humans had done the impossible again. They had used a pulsar as a weapon. No species had ever been crazy enough to try that before. "Pull back," Thex ordered quietly. "We need to rethink everything we know about humans." On the Starfall, Doyun sat in his command chair and tried to stop shaking. His head hurt more than anything had ever hurt before, but he was smiling. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." The ship was damaged. The crew was in pain. They were stranded in space with dead engines. But they were alive. And somewhere out there, a Vorn fleet was learning a new lesson about humans. Never underestimate them. Never corner them. And never, ever assume that they will give up. The darkness lasted for what felt like hours. Captain Doyun Park sat in his command chair, his eyes slowly adjusting to the emergency lights. The main screens were dead. The consoles were dark. The Starfall floated silently through space like a ghost ship. Then, one by one, the lights began to return. Engineer Tiho Lim had crawled through the maintenance tunnels, rewiring systems by hand, rerouting power from every spare source he could find. His hands were burned from touching hot circuits and his body ached from the pulsar's radiation. But he did not stop. He could not stop. His crew was counting on him. "Captain," Tiho's voice came through a crackling speaker, "I have basic power restored. Engines will be online in 2 minutes." "Good work, Tiho," Doyun replied. His voice was hoarse. His head still throbbed with pain, but hearing those words gave him strength. Yuna Kang worked at her console, which was slowly coming back to life. Her fingers were shaking, but she forced them to be steady. The tactical display flickered and showed a weak image. "Captain, I have limited sensors. The 3 Vorn ships that followed us are dead in space. No power, no movement. The rest of the fleet has pulled back." "They are afraid," Dr. Hana Choi said quietly. She was treating a crew member who had collapsed during the pulse. "They saw what we did. They do not understand how we survived." Doyun looked around the bridge. His crew looked terrible. They were pale, exhausted, and in pain. But they were alive, every single one of them. 47 humans had faced a fleet of 47 warships, and they were still breathing. "Minyu," Doyun said, "as soon as engines are online, take us away from here. Find the nearest route to human space." Navigator Minyu Seo nodded weakly. He was slumped in his chair, but his eyes were focused on his console. "Yes, Captain. I have already calculated the course. It will take us 3 days at full speed." "Then let us hope our engines hold together for 3 days." The Starfall's engines coughed, sputtered, and then roared back to life. The ship began to move, slowly at first, then faster. It limped away from the pulsar, away from the dead Vorn ships, away from the nightmare that had almost killed them all. Far behind them, Commodore Thex watched the human ship escape. He could have pursued. He had enough ships to catch them, but something stopped him. It was not fear exactly. It was respect, and perhaps a small amount of wisdom. These humans had done things that should have been impossible. They had disrupted a Vorn fleet with nothing but communication signals. They had blinded warships with mining lasers. They had used a pulsar as a weapon. They had survived when any other species would have died. Thex was a soldier. He had fought many enemies in his long career. He knew when he was facing something new, something dangerous. "Let them go," he said quietly. His officers stared at him in disbelief. "Commodore, Admiral Kale will be furious. He ordered us to capture or destroy them." "Admiral Kale is not here," Thex replied. "And the Admiral does not understand what we are dealing with. These humans are not prey. They are something else entirely. The Dominion Council needs to know about this. We need to warn them." The Vorn ships turned away and began the long journey back to their territory. They carried with them stories that would spread across the galaxy. Stories about a species that refused to die. Stories about humans. Days passed. The starfall traveled through empty space, its crew slowly recovering. Tiho spent every waking hour repairing damage. Hana treated injuries and monitored the crew's health. Minyu kept them on course. Yuna watched for any signs of pursuit. And Doyun sat in his command chair, thinking about everything that had happened. They had started as explorers. They had become survivors. And somewhere along the way, they had become legends. On the third day, the starfall crossed into human space. A patrol ship detected them and sent a message of welcome. Word spread quickly. The lost exploration vessel had returned against all odds. When they finally docked at Station Prime, a crowd was waiting for them. Officers from Fleet Command, scientists who wanted to study their data, reporters who wanted to hear their story, and family members who had given up hope and now wept with joy. Do-yun stood at the airlock as it opened. He looked out at the faces waiting for him. He saw hope. He saw admiration. He saw the beginning of something new. A fleet admiral approached him. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her name was Admiral Sujin Han, and she was one of the most respected leaders in the human fleet. "Captain Park," she said, "you and your crew have accomplished something remarkable. The reports we have received are almost unbelievable. You faced a Vorn fleet and survived." "We did what we had to do, Admiral," Do-yun replied simply. "We are human. We do not know how to quit." Admiral Han smiled slightly. "The galaxy is watching us now, Captain. The Vorn have sent messages to other species, warning them about humanity. They are afraid of us. Other species are curious. Some want to meet us. Some want to ally with us. And some want to destroy us before we become too powerful," Do-yun guessed. "Yes, but that is a problem for another day. Today we celebrate. You brought your people home, every single one of them." Do-yun looked back at his crew as they stepped off the ship. Yuna was supporting Tiho, who had finally allowed himself to collapse from exhaustion. Minyu was shaking hands with the patrol officers who had escorted them in. Hana was already talking to the medical teams, making sure her patients would be properly cared for. They were not soldiers. They were explorers, scientists, and dreamers. But when the universe had tried to kill them, they had fought back with everything they had. And they had won. Later that night, Do-yun stood alone at a window, looking out at the stars. He thought about Admiral Kale and his arrogance. He thought about Commodore Thex and his reluctant respect. He thought about all the species out there who had never encountered humans before. The galaxy was a big place. There were thousands of species, millions of worlds, and dangers beyond imagination. Humanity was still young compared to most of them. They were still learning, still growing, still finding their place among the stars. But they had proven something important. They had shown that humans were not easy to defeat. They adapted. They improvised. They refused to surrender. They would fight with mining lasers if they had no weapons. They would fly into pulsars if there was no other way. A message arrived on his personal tablet. It was from Fleet Command. He had been promoted to Commodore and given command of a new ship, a larger ship, a ship with actual weapons this time. But the message also contained something else. Reports from across the galaxy. Alien species were talking about humans, some with fear, some with curiosity, some with hope. And everywhere, the same story was being told. The story of a small human ship that had been surrounded by 47 warships. The story of a crew that had refused to give up. The story of a captain who had looked at impossible odds and said, "1 hour is more than enough." Do-yun smiled and put down the tablet. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He did not know what new challenges waited for humanity among the stars. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, humans would face it the same way they always had, with courage, with creativity, with the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they endured, and sometimes against all odds they won. Across the galaxy, in the halls of alien councils and the bridges of warships, A new saying began to spread. It was a warning, passed from species to species, from world to world. Never surround a human. They do not think like prey, they think like survivors. And survivors always find a way.